we've got a Green Bay Dallas matchup, two prolific organizations. Mike McCarthy, the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys, facing off against his former team in the Green Bay Packers, led by Matt LaFleur. Look, the Green Bay Packers, they got better as the season went on. Jordan Love really proved that he is the reason why they were so confident in drafting him, moving on from Aaron Rodgers. And I mean, this is a young quarterback with a very exciting future. Does his story continue of this 2023-2024 season against Dallas? That is yet to be decided, because as we know about the Dallas Cowboys, if there's one thing we know about them this year, is that they are electric at home. They get that home field advantage, securing the number 2 spot after beating Washington handily. Dak Prescott looking great. You know, they asked him to wear the division cap. He said, no, I'm looking for something bigger. Sam, as a Dallas Cowboys fan, talk to me about what your thoughts are of this game, some of the storylines, and then tell me that key player that you think is really going to have a contributing factor in this game.
Well, I think you made a lot of great points. I still have nightmares of the last couple of games in the playoffs between the Packers and the Cowboys. And now, that was Aaron Rodgers and this is Jordan Love, and I know CBS and Fox, every time they've gotten the chance over the last few weeks when they've done those games, they're throwing up where Jordan Love's numbers are in his first year as a starter compared to Favre's and Rodgers, and that his has surpassed him. I mean, this is Mike McCarthy's successor, Matt LaFleur. I mean, there was no one in between. You know, it went from McCarthy to LaFleur, and now we're getting Dallas Green Bay playoff game. And the last time Dallas played Green Bay in a playoff game in Dallas, it was Jeff Heath, what I thought would have been a sack fumble, could have changed the game, changed the whole landscape of everything. It ended up being Aaron Rodgers just took the sack, and the next play he threw one of the most perfect throws I've ever seen to Martellus Bennett. So I'm obviously rooting for the Cowboys. I mean, they're opening up at 7.5-point favorites. I don't even love that. I feel like that's bulletin board material for Green Bay. Like, no one's counting on us. We came in as the 7th seed in the Green. You know, we no one's really expecting us to do anything. You know, Jordan Love has the ability to do some stuff with his arms and legs. I like what Dak said after the game, as you mentioned, that he's not settled. But I have such problems dealing with the last 25, 30 years of Dallas in the playoffs and letting me down. Everything is set up that way, and you're going to go, CeeDee Lamb is arguably the best receiver in the NFL this year. And the way he's playing, no one can stop him. And you know, he's getting so many targets. He's getting like 8-9 receptions a game, 100 total yards. They're using him in the run game as well. I love all that, but I'm not putting anything past Jair Alexander, who's probably going to be matched up against him. He's arguably one of the best defensive backs in the league. We saw what he's done against Justin Jefferson in key moments, and you know, he steps up. He had a funny little moment on the news where this Green Bay reporter was talking about it, and he just came in and he goes, "The Pack is back," and then he did this, and then the reporter had no idea who he was. But you know, there's Aaron Jones. You know, that worries me. You know, there's the young receivers. We saw what they did against Detroit. You know, again, this is a game inside a dome. It's not played in Green Bay in the cold and the outdoor weather being a factor. This is a game that, again, Dallas has dominated at home all year. They've won 16 straight going back to last year. None of those were in a situation where they were playing in a home playoff game. You know, and so even this year, people were questioning, who have they beaten at home? Well, they beat the Rams at home. They're a playoff team. They beat Seattle at home. They were a game away from being a playoff team. They beat the Eagles at home. They were a playoff team. So they did have some notches on their belt where they had great games at home. I just wonder with Cowboys, you know, and I think back to what they did against Detroit, like the game management of the things where they could have just run the ball out 3 times and given Detroit no time to come down and score. And they ended up throwing 3 times, and Detroit had plenty of time to come down. That, to me, is going to be the deciding factor. And the player that I'm looking forward to is the most to have a big game is Tony Pollard. And you say, Sam, well, it's got to be Dak. It's got to be CD. Of course, those are the guys that I expect. But Tony Pollard had a very solid season, but a very quiet 1,000 yards. I mean, I feel like Najee down the stretch had more of explosiveness and a lot of like, wow, Najee had a big game. But Tony Pollard never really had those big games, and they use him in the run and the pass. I mean, Rico Dowd's been used sparingly as well, but for me, the Cowboys need to dictate the game through the run, because that's really what sets up everything. Then you can use the play action, which Dak is very good at. Then you can use CD in motion, use him in the run as well. Use Ferguson, as a quick tight end screen. I mean, those are the type of plays that I'm going to be looking for, because Dak, although he's been great, has had tendencies to turn the ball over. He did finish with under 10 interceptions this year, which was his goal, so he did hit that. But I still have questions, and I think there's other guys on the offense that are going to need to step up. The offensive line, I know we're getting back Zach Martin. He didn't play last week. I know we're getting back Tyler Smith. He didn't play play last week, so those are going to be huge additions. And hopefully with the run, I mean, Tony Pollard, again, if he can get 4 to 5 yards of carry and play in those second and third and shorts, Dallas, I can run very creative plays with Cooks and CD. Michael Gallup has really not done much this year as well, but Jalen Tolbert has stepped up with a couple big touchdowns against Philadelphia and against Washington last week. So that to me is what they need to do, is establish the run. And there was actually a stat in the game against Washington where they were averaging 5-6 yards per carry early in the year, and it kind of went down to like 3.84 over the last few weeks. And that's where you're playing in those second and third and longs. And if you're not getting anything in the run game and you're forcing Dak on 3rd and 10, 3rd and 12 or 3rd and 8, like those are going to be those, okay, you got to take a deep breath, Dak, and you got to make precise throws where you can kind of manage the game a little bit better if they can get an established run game, which you can say about most teams, but Dallas specifically needs to focus on that against Green Bay, whose rush defense maybe isn't as good as their secondary is in the pass game.
Yeah, the run game definitely sets the tempo, and especially in the playoffs, like you can't abandon the run game, but we obviously know what Dak can do in the pass game, and it's going to come down onto his shoulders. But you mentioned Jair Alexander going up against CeeDee Lamb. That's going to be a big matchup. And that's why I think the guy who really needs to step up and have a big game is Brandon Cooks. This is a guy that you went into the offseason, traded for to come in and be that second weapon, because if there's one thing Dallas learned last year is that you can't win a playoff game with just one tool. You need to have multiple weapons. You have to have, obviously in that game against San Francisco, Tony Pollard got hurt, and that really kind of was the breaking piece in terms of what that offense was trying to do. But Brandon Cooks, veteran wide receiver, has looked very good with Dallas and with Dak this year. And the chemistry they have, the deep threat ability, what he provides to this offense is very different than CeeDee Lamb, and it's such a good compliment. And I think him coming into this game and even in this potential playoff run, assuming they can get past Green Bay and make a run, obviously as a Cowboys fan, that's a dream for you. I think Brandon Cooks has to be that guy that can really take some of the pressure off of CeeDee Lamb. We know what CeeDee Lamb's going to do. 10 for 100 is something I almost expect from him at this point. But you need to have another piece. You need to keep that secondary honest, and Tony Pollard is a big reason to doing that, but also Brandon Cooks.